Is AQW dead? It's a Friday night and there's about 2,700 people online right now. Now this is a pretty low number even for AQW. Now obviously I'm not going to try and compare to absolutely years ago when we had 30,000 people online at any time. However, it was only about a year ago we were able to hit almost 10k online, and the only time that really happens is whenever there's like a new class or just a really massive event such as Dage's birthday or something similar. I think the most recent peak we've had was probably the Frostville gifting event. That was partially fueled by loads of people logging in with their alt accounts so they can receive maximum gifts, but even then it was a pretty decent number compared to what we have now. Now it's kind of obvious that the player base will decrease every year because we have no new players coming in, or at least very close to zero new players, just because the number of people who are interested in playing a 2D Flash game in 2024 is obviously going to be low, and also AE isn't actually trying to advertise as hardly as they used to. So it's kind of natural to have a dying, slowly declining player base, but there has been a really good effort by AE in the last couple of years to maintain the player base they already have. And I would say this started ever since the first Ultra Boss, because some of the biggest criticisms you'll hear from AQW players themselves is that it's becoming like a very single player oriented game. You can solo every boss by yourself, you can complete any story by yourself, whereas back in the day, you'd need 3 or 4 players just to kill the Red Dragon, which is now considered a measly tiny HP boss. So with the introduction of Ultra Bosses, we suddenly had some cooperation in the game once again. Of course, a few people were frustrated by it because they'd gotten so used to soloing every monster, they couldn't stand the idea of having to coordinate for about 2 minutes. And AU made sure to continue this tradition of releasing a new Ultra every couple of months. What used to be considered difficult back in maybe 2021, such as Ultra Ezreal, is now a monster that can actually be soloed yet again. Because of course now there are much harder challenges that we've grown to adapt to, such as Ultra Speaker, which is pretty much agreed upon being the hardest Ultra in the game, and other difficult bosses as well like Ultra Darkon and many more. Even Ultra bosses are a bit of a divisive topic, as some complain they're just too complex and not worth it, and some are pretty happy with it, obviously. In my opinion though, I think the best way they've been used is to take away from farms like Void High Lord, Legion Revenant, where you'd have to farm 1,000 of the exact same mob over and over again. Instead, spending maybe like 5 to 10 minutes, 15 minutes with a group of friends killing an Ultra is way more fulfilling and way more fun than just spamming a single boss 1,000 times. I think they really hit the nail on the head in that aspect. But we also have to address how we're actually able to beat these bosses now, seeing as we have unlocked a whole new difficulty of monsters, and with that comes a whole new set of enchantments called Forge Enchantments. Now for those of you who don't already have some of the more late game enchantments of the Forge, such as Dauntless, what it does essentially is buff a class to a whole unrecognizable level. You can make almost any luck or fighter based class look absolutely broken just by using Dauntless. And of course that's not the only OP enhancement, there are other really strong ones too, such as Valiant, Elysium, Acheron, and this has basically allowed us to reach a whole new level of farming and soloing DPS. Like if you thought Legion Revenant was a little bit overkill when it comes to farming, you should see Archmage with Acheron. But how does this really link to the game dying? Well, it's just the fact that now there's so much more new content being released, and by new content I don't just mean a Friday release, a somewhat irrelevant storyline, but I mean like actual gameplay changes and things that are really worth spending time farming for. Some of the biggest spikes you'll see in the player base will be whenever there's a new class released, but actually instead of releasing a ton of new classes, AE's opted to buff a lot of the older classes. Now, if you haven't played AQW in a while, you won't know about this, but a lot of the older classes are now pretty good. And if you want to know which classes these are, you can just check my channel. I've made videos on most of them which have been buffed, and there are some I haven't, so you can just check design notes and you can follow the AQW class Twitter account. And this is obviously a great move by the AQW class team. Of course, they are still releasing new classes such as Arcana Invoker, the Darkon class. It's been one of the most hyped classes we've seen yet, as it's been teased for over a year, and now we finally have it. and thankfully it's lived up to the hype. It's actually really strong in a lot of different areas. But even with all this hype, there's one thing that's got more hype than even the Arcane Invoker class. And that of course is Aqw 2D or Aqw Mobile or Aqw Infinity. It's known by a ton of names, but we'll just call it Aqw Mobile for now. Now, even if you aren't following AQW news consistently, you'll at least know about the updates Aqw Mobile's been getting. We used to just get screenshots of new progress they'd made in developing it, but now we've actually gotten a taste of the game itself. If you bought membership for the 15th birthday of AQW, you got access to the AQW Mobile demo. Now, if this game actually does get released, could we see an increase in the AQW player base, or at least in the Aqw2D player base, or will it actually be much lower than what we have now? Now, it's going to be a huge deal when it comes out, because obviously playing in 60 FPS for the first time and seeing a ton of new features and just being able to play in mobile, all of that is going to be quite a big deal and will be super hype. But I don't think it'll be the explosion in player base people think it's going to be. Perhaps it'll be able to claw back some of the slightly retired player base, but I don't see it actually getting new players in who have never played AQW before. But to be honest, AE doesn't really need to do that to survive. Like right now, they have a pretty healthy business model, because the money they make from all the ACs players buy, it's still a lot of money even now. Like, you'll casually see players on AQW Twitter have literally a million ACs in their inventory. Or for example, in the gifting event, you'll see some players donating absolute millions, even 5-10 million ACs. And they were able to do that because 90% of the player base are now fully grown adults. And so they have their own revenue, their own money that they can use for whatever they want. And when you've been playing the game for 10 years plus, you're going to be less hesitant to spend money on it because it's kind of a long-term investment. And so with the amount of money they're making from AQW alone, AE is actually doing pretty well as a company. And there's still people who are just going to buy the 10k AC chest every month, no matter what. As long as AE keeps pumping those out, they should be pretty much fine. So overall, is AQW actually a dead game? The obvious answer is yes, it's pretty dead. But is it dying any more than it has been before? I'd say no, because if you haven't quit AQW after 12-13 years, what's going to make you quit on the 13th or 14th year? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And if you see AQW surviving the next 10, maybe 15 years from here on out, do you guys see AQW surviving the next 10, maybe 15 years, or nah? Also, like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and see you guys next time.